The letter under my door wasn't an invitation. It was a death sentence, wrapped in expensive cream-colored paper. $2.8 million, 30 days to pay, and a name that would haunt every nightmare I'd have for the next year. Damian Blackwood. I almost stepped right over it, almost missed the thing that would destroy my life. But I didn't. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear open the envelope. I was already late for my second shift at Romano's Diner in Midtown, the lunch rush, where businessmen in $1,000 suits would leave me $3 tips and look through me like I was invisible. The paper felt heavy, rich, the kind of stationery people like me never touch. Dear Miss Chen, pursuant to the estate settlement of Mr. David Chen. The coffee cup I'd been holding hit the floor. Brown liquid spread across the warped hardwood of my Brooklyn studio like blood from a wound. Deceased. My father was dead. I hadn't spoken to David Chen in 5 years. 5 years since our last fight. Since he chose his poker buddies over Mom's funeral. Since he told me I was just like her. Weak. Emotional. A disappointment. 5 years of silence. And now he was gone. But that wasn't even the worst part. You have inherited all assets and liabilities of the aforementioned. This includes an outstanding debt of $2,847,000 to Blackwood Enterprises. I read it again. Then again. The numbers didn't change. $2.8 million. My vision blurred. My knees hit the floor next to the spreading coffee stain. The letter crumpled in my fist. How? How did a small-time contractor from Queens, a man who lived in a rent-controlled apartment and drove a 15-year-old Toyota, owe nearly $3 million to anyone? Payment in full is due within 30 days of this notice, or the collateral property will be seized, along with any additional assets in your possession. I had $1,247 in my checking account. My assets consisted of a futon I'd found on the curb, a laptop held together with duct tape, and approximately 17 cents in loose change scattered across my kitchen counter. This couldn't be real, but the final line made my blood turn to ice. Mr. Damian Blackwood requests your presence at Blackwood Tower, 5th Avenue, this Friday at 6 p.m. to discuss terms. Failure to appear will result in immediate legal action. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and Googled the name. What I found made me wish I hadn't. Oh my God! Maya! Maya! Are you okay? Jessica Torres burst through my apartment door. I'd given her a key after my ex-boyfriend cheated with my roommate, and I'd needed someone to make sure I was still breathing every morning. She took one look at my face and dropped her nursing textbooks on the floor. What happened? I couldn't speak, just handed her my phone. The screen showed article after article. Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Damian Blackwood's net worth hits $4.2 billion. Blackwood Enterprises CEO accused of predatory lending lawsuit dismissed. Mystery surrounds disappearance of billionaire's girlfriend. Jessica's eyes went wide. Holy shit. This is the guy your dad owes money to? Owed, I whispered. Past tense. Dad's dead. Her hand flew to her mouth. Maya, I'm so sorry. I don't. I stood up, ignoring the coffee soaking into my scrubs. He wasn't a father. He was a stranger who happened to share my DNA. But this, I gestured at the letter. This is his final gift. Destroying me from beyond the grave. Jessica scrolled through the articles, her face getting paler with each headline. Maya, this Blackwood guy. There are rumors. His ex-girlfriend disappeared 4 years ago. Just vanished. The police investigated him, but couldn't prove anything. What are you saying? She looked up at me. Brown eyes, full of fear. I'm saying maybe you shouldn't go to this meeting. Maybe you should get a lawyer. Or leave town. And go where? I laughed, the sound bitter and broken. I'm drowning in student loans. I worked 2 jobs just to afford this shoebox. I've got $17 in tips in my apron and exactly 0 options. Jessica kept scrolling. Then she stopped. Her face went white. What? What is it? She turned the phone toward me. It was a photo from some charity gala, the kind where plates cost $10,000 and everyone's dress costs more than my yearly rent. And there, in the center of the image, were 2 men in tuxedos, champagne glasses raised, smiling at the camera like old friends. My father and Damian Blackwood. The date stamp read, 2 years ago. My hands started shaking again. He knew him. My father knew him. This wasn't some random debt. This wasn't a business transaction gone wrong. This was personal. I grabbed my laptop, ignoring Jessica's protests, and started digging. Every article, every mention of Damian Blackwood's name, every rabbit hole the internet had to offer. Most of it was standard billionaire stuff. Ruthless businessman, real estate mogul, self-made success story after inheriting his father's company at 25. Coldly handsome. Never smiled in photos. Dated models and actresses, but never for long. They called him the Ice King of Manhattan. But then I found something else. An old property record. A foreclosure listing from 7 years ago. 1847 Riverside Drive. Manhattan. Historic brownstone. 4 stories. Original owner, David Chen. I clicked through, my heart pounding harder with each new piece of information. My father had owned a brownstone in Manhattan, a property worth millions, and I'd never known. The listing showed photos, a beautiful pre-war building with original crown molding, fireplaces, hardwood floors, the kind of place I'd walked past 1,000 times and never imagined I could afford to even tour. But there was more. I dug deeper, following links and archived news articles, until I found it. Tragedy strikes Manhattan property. Fire claims life of real estate mogul. 20 years ago, Jonathan Blackwood, prominent developer and father of then 15-year-old Damian Blackwood, died in a fire at 1847 Riverside Drive during property renovation. The cause was ruled accidental, though questions remained about the circumstances. The address. The same address. My father's brownstone. The property tied to this debt. It was the place where Damian Blackwood's father died. They say the devil wears Prada. But Damian Blackwood wore Tom Ford and looked like sin wrapped in a $10,000 suit. And he was about to own me for exactly 1 year. The elevator ride to the 72nd floor felt like ascending into hell, dressed as heaven. My reflection in the mirrored walls showed a girl trying to look brave and failing miserably. Pale skin. Dark circles under my eyes from 4 nights of no sleep. Cheap dress that screamed. Target clearance rack. I looked like prey. And when those elevator doors opened, I walked straight into the predator's den. The penthouse office took up the entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the space, showing off Central Park like it was just another possession to be owned. Black marble floors. Modern art that probably cost more than my student loans. And silence so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. But no Damian Blackwood. I took a step forward, my cheap heels clicking too loud against the marble. Then another. The office was massive, with a desk the size of my entire studio apartment positioned in front of those ridiculous windows. This was my chance. My only chance. I moved quickly toward the desk, looking for anything files, documents, some clue about what my father had hidden, what this was really about. My hands were shaking as I reached for a drawer. Miss Chen. The voice came from behind me, smooth and cold as ice. Breaking and entering before our appointment? I like initiative, but I prefer obedience. I spun around so fast, I nearly fell. Damian Blackwood stood in a doorway I hadn't noticed, leaning against the frame like he had all the time in the world. And God help me, Jessica was right about the photos not doing him justice. Mid-30s, Tall and lean with shoulders that filled out that charcoal suit like it was painted on. Dark hair that looked artfully disheveled, like he'd run his hands through it and it had decided to cooperate out of fear. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of smoke, gray and absolutely impenetrable, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with warning. He was beautiful the way a shark is beautiful, perfect and deadly, and designed to destroy. I was early. I managed, lifting my chin. Thought I'd wait. You were snooping. He pushed off the doorframe and walked toward me with fluid, predatory grace. And not very well. I've been watching you on security cameras for the past 12 minutes. You circled the lobby 3 times before coming up. Spent 4 minutes outside the building trying not to vomit. Very entertaining. Heat flooded my face. You were watching me? I watch everything that belongs to me, Maya. He stopped about 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and something darker, more dangerous. And you've belonged to me since the moment your father put his signature on a contract 7 years ago. You just didn't know it yet. The casual possessiveness in his voice made anger cut through my fear. I don't belong to anyone. Really? One dark eyebrow lifted. Because I have 2.8 million reasons that say otherwise. Now sit. He gestured to a leather chair facing his massive desk. It wasn't a request. I wanted to tell him to go to hell. Wanted to walk out of that office and never look back. But I thought of that number 2.8 million and my mother's medical bills I'd thought were paid off, and the life I'd been building one exhausting shift at a time. All of it about to collapse. So I sat. Damien moved around his desk with that same fluid grace, settling into his chair and steepling his fingers as he studied me. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. I broke first. How did my father accumulate that kind of debt? Interesting. His lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. More like a predator, acknowledging prey with enough spirit to make the chase interesting. Most people would ask if I'm going to send them to prison or threaten them. You want the story first. Knowledge is power, I said. Even for the powerless. You're smarter than he was. Something flickered across Damien's face. David came to me 7 years ago with a proposition. He owned a historic brownstone on Riverside Drive, prime Manhattan real estate. He wanted to renovate it, flip it for profit. He needed capital. He pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk. Inside were contracts, property deeds, photos of a beautiful 4-story brownstone I'd never seen before. I gave him $2 million, Damien continued. Standard terms, reasonable interest. Your father promised the property would sell within 18 months, that he'd pay me back with profit to spare. He never did. Instead, he took out additional loans against it, from me and from others, promising returns that never materialized. I stared at the photos. The brownstone was gorgeous. Original crown molding, fireplaces, the kind of place that sold for millions, even half renovated. So take it, I said flatly. Take the house. Sell it. I don't want it. I don't want any of this. I don't want any of this. It's not that simple. Damien rose, moving to the window. Against the backdrop of Manhattan, he looked like a king surveying his kingdom. Your father was clever. Possibly too clever for his own good. He structured the debt in a way that tied it to you specifically. If you declare bankruptcy, I lose everything. If I seize the property through foreclosure, I trigger penalty clauses that reduce what I can recover by 60%. It's a legal maze designed to trap us both. My hands clenched in my lap. Then what do you want from me? I'm a waitress and nursing student. I have $247 in my bank account. I can't pay you. I know exactly what you have, Maya, down to the 17 cents in loose change on your kitchen counter. He turned, and something flickered across his face, something that might have been amusement, or might have been something darker. I don't want your money. The way he said my name, familiar and possessive, sent warning bells screaming through my head. Then what? But before he could answer, he pulled out another document from his desk drawer. This one had a red stamp across the top. Confidential. He placed it in front of me. It was an autopsy report. My father's autopsy report. 3 months ago, your father had what was ruled a heart attack in a hotel room in Atlantic City, Damien said, his voice carefully neutral. But I had my own people take a second look at the evidence. The toxicology, the circumstances. I forced myself to read, even though the medical terminology swam in front of my eyes. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. But there were notes in the margins, highlighted sections about potassium levels, about traces of something called thallium. What is this? Proof that your father was murdered. Damien's gray eyes locked onto mine. Someone poisoned him. Slow-acting toxin that mimics heart attack symptoms. Whoever did it was careful, professional, and they're still out there. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair, trying to breathe. Why are you telling me this? Because whoever killed your father will come for you next. He moved closer, looming over me now. They think you know where it is. The thing your father found in that brownstone. The thing he was using as leverage against powerful people. And when they realize you don't know anything, he let the sentence hang like a noose. I looked up at him, searching his face for lies. You could be making this up, to scare me, to control me. I could be, he agreed. But I'm not. Your father stumbled onto something dangerous, Maya. Something worth killing for. And now, you're the only loose end. My throat was so dry I could barely speak. What do you want from me? Damien straightened, putting professional distance between us again. When he spoke, his voice was pure business. Cold. Final. I want you to marry me. The words hung in the air, like smoke from a gun. I laughed. I couldn't help it. A sharp, desperate sound that echoed in that massive office. You're insane. A contract marriage. 1 year. He pulled out yet another document, placing it on the desk beside the autopsy report. You'll move into my penthouse. Appear at social functions as my wife. Play the role in public. In exchange, I'll clear your debt completely. After 1 year, we get a quiet divorce. You walk away free, and I'll even set you up with enough money to finish your nursing degree debt-free. $100,000. Cash. $100,000. The words echoed in my head like a prayer. Why? I whispered. Why would you do this? I have my reasons. His voice went cold, final. They don't concern you. Like hell they don't. Anger cut through shock. You want me to marry you? Live with you? Pretend to be your wife? And I don't even get to know why? No. He leaned forward, hands flat on the desk, bringing his face level with mine. You don't. But I'll tell you what you do get to know. I can protect you from whoever killed your father. I have resources, security, lawyers. Marry me, and you're untouchable. Refuse, and you're a walking target with a $2.8 million bullseye on your back. I stared at the contract, my mind reeling. This was absurd. Illegal, probably. Definitely immoral. What's the catch? Damien smiled then. And it was beautiful and terrifying. Read the contract, Maya. It's all there. Separate bedrooms. No physical intimacy required unless mutually agreed upon. You attend events, smile for cameras, play the devoted wife in public. In private, You're free to do whatever you want within the penthouse. It's more freedom than you have now. That's not freedom. That's a cage with better furniture. Perhaps. He straightened, checking his watch, probably worth more than my yearly rent. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, I'll pursue other methods of collection. And I promise you won't enjoy them. He walked to the door, opening it in clear dismissal. I stood on shaking legs, clutching the contract to my chest. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get a lawyer, and clued, with provers, with clues to the tancher, to do literally anything except sign away a year of my life to a man who might have murdered my father. But then he spoke again, and his words stopped me at the threshold. Miss Chen. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. One more thing. Your mother's medical bills from 3 years ago? The breast cancer treatment at Mount Sinai? Your father told you they were paid off. He lied. The floor dropped out from under me. What? $400,000. Still outstanding. Accumulating interest. The hospital hasn't pursued collection yet out of courtesy, but they will. And when they do, they'll come after you as next of kin. He tilted his head, watching my face crumble. Your father made sure you'd have no choice but to come to me. The debt to Blackwood Enterprises. Your mother's bills. He structured it all very carefully. The question is, did he do it to protect you or trap you? I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The walls were closing in. My father had orchestrated this. All of it. From beyond the grave, David Chen had made sure I'd end up here, in this office, with this contract, with no way out. 72 hours, Damien repeated. Choose wisely. I walked to the elevator in a daze. The doors closed, and I watched Damien Blackwood's floor disappear as I descended back down to earth, back to reality, back to a life that was already over. I made it to the street before I pulled out my phone and called Jessica. How'd it go? She asked immediately. He wants to marry me. Silence. Then, what? Contract marriage. 1 year. In exchange for clearing all the debt and giving me enough money to finish school. I leaned against the cold glass of Blackwood Tower, watching business people rush past like I wasn't drowning right there on Fifth Avenue. Jess, my father didn't just leave me his debt. He left me my mother's medical bills too. $400,000 I didn't know about. He set this up. He made sure I couldn't say no. Oh my God, Maya, I don't have a choice, I whispered. It's this, or spend the rest of my life buried in debt I didn't create. Debt that will destroy any chance I have at the life I've been killing myself to build. For 3 days, I didn't sleep, didn't eat, just read that contract over and over until the words blurred together. It was surprisingly straightforward, almost too straightforward. Marry Damien Blackwood. Live in his penthouse at 211 West 10th Street in Tribeca. Attend social functions as required. Maintain the appearance of a loving marriage in public. Separate bedrooms guaranteed. No physical intimacy required unless mutually agreed upon by both parties. After 12 months, divorce. Debt cleared. $100,000 settlement. I even took it to a free legal aid attorney in the Bronx. A tired woman named Patricia Santos, who looked at the contract like it was written in gold. It's airtight, she said. Unusual as hell, but legal. If he honors it, you'd be crazy not to sign. And if he doesn't? Patricia shrugged. Then you're married to a billionaire who could crush you in court. But Miss Chen, if you don't sign, you're looking at bankruptcy. Wage garnishment for the rest of your life. Destroyed credit. These kinds of debts have ways of following you forever. They'll take every paycheck, every tax return, every chance you have at a normal life. On the third night, alone in my apartment, with the city lights bleeding through my thin curtains, I made my decision. I picked up my phone and typed out a text to the number on Damien's business card. "I'll sign. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Your office." The response came 30 seconds later. "I knew you would. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Blackwood." I stared at that message for a long time. Mrs. Blackwood. The name tasted like poison and power. But as I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, my mind kept circling back to one thing. Damien Blackwood didn't need to marry me to collect a debt. He could have seized assets, pursued legal action, destroyed me a dozen different ways. So why this? Why trap me in a contract marriage when he could have just taken everything? Unless the debt wasn't what he was really after, unless he wanted something else. Something my father had hidden. Something in that brownstone where his own father died 20 years ago. And he needed me close, controlled, where he could watch my every move while he hunted through my father's secrets. I thought about that autopsy report, about David Chen's heart attack that wasn't, about powerful people willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. And I made myself a promise in the dark. I'd sign Damien Blackwood's contract. I'd play his perfect wife. I'd smile for his cameras and attend his galas and live in his cage. But I'd also find out what my father discovered. I'd learn the truth about Jonathan Blackwood's death. And I'd figure out exactly what Damien was really after. If he thought I'd be a compliant trophy wife while he manipulated me, he was about to learn that Maya Chen was her father's daughter after all. Stubborn, reckless, and way too stupid to know when to quit. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I showed up at Blackwood Tower at exactly 9 a.m., wearing the same Target dress, carrying nothing but my ID and the signed contract. Damien was waiting in his office, looking like he hadn't doubted my answer for a second. He didn't smile when I handed him the contract, just examined my signature, then pulled out a pen and signed his own name with a flourish. "Congratulations, Mrs. Blackwood." He slid a black credit card across the desk. "No limit. Buy whatever you need for the move. A car will pick you up from your apartment Friday at 6 p.m. Pack light. Everything else will be provided." "When's the wedding?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Already done. I had my lawyers file the paperwork this morning. As far as the state of New York is concerned, we've been married for 3 hours. My heart stopped. "What? What?" "Civil ceremony. I signed as proxy for both of us. Perfectly legal." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "I don't believe in unnecessary pageantry. We'll have a public celebration next month, something for the press and my business associates. But legally, you're mine now. Mine. That word again. Possessive and absolute." I should have argued. Should have demanded he undo it somehow. But I just stood there, numb, as Damien Blackwood circled his desk and stopped inches from me. "1 year," he said quietly. "Play your role. Don't try to run. Don't dig where you shouldn't dig. And we'll both get what we want." "And what do you want?" I looked up at him, searching his face. "Really? Really? 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 Really?" For just a second, something cracked in his cold exterior. Something raw and hungry and almost desperate. Then it was gone, replaced by that icy control. "Justice," he said, "for my father, for yours, for everyone who's been destroyed by people who think they're untouchable." He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in that massive office, married to a stranger, trapped in a game I didn't understand. But as I rode the elevator back down, clutching that credit card with no limit, I realized something. Damien Blackwood had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd given me access, resources, a reason to dig into his world, and I was going to find every secret he'd buried, every lie he'd told, every truth about what really happened in that brownstone 20 years ago. The game was on, and Damien Blackwood had no idea who he'd really married. Moving into a billionaire's penthouse should feel like a fairy tale. Instead, it felt like being swallowed alive. And the most dangerous thing? I was starting to like it. The car that picked me up wasn't a car. It was a black Mercedes that cost more than most people's houses, driven by a man named Marcus who didn't speak except to say, Mrs. Blackwood, like the title was already tattooed on my forehead. Mrs. Blackwood. 3 days married, and the name still felt like a costume that didn't fit. My entire life fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Everything I owned. Everything I'd worked for. It looked pathetic, loaded into the trunk of a car worth $200,000. The Tribeca penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought humans didn't deserve corners or warm colors. All glass and steel and sharp edges. Marcus carried my bags like they weighed nothing. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. Of course it did, because heaven forbid someone unauthorized breathe the same air as Damian Blackwood. The doors opened directly into the penthouse, 12,000 square feet of marble and minimalist furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows that made me feel like I was floating above the city. The living room alone was bigger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. White leather couches that looked too expensive to sit on, abstract art that probably cost more than my student loans, and silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Mrs. Blackwood. A woman's voice, cold and clipped, came from my left. Well, and clipped. I turned to find a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a black dress that screamed housekeeper, but somehow made her look like she ran the place. Her eyes were pale blue and sharp as glass. I'm Mrs. Morrison. I manage the household. She looked me up and down with the kind of judgment that made me want to apologize for existing. Mr. Blackwood is at the office. He's left instructions for your orientation. Orientation. Like I was starting a job, which I guess I was. Mrs. Morrison's tour was efficient and cold. Guest rooms I wasn't allowed to use. A kitchen I wouldn't need because Mr. Blackwood employs a private chef. A library with first editions behind locked glass. A gym that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. And then, finally, my bedroom. It was twice the size of my old studio apartment. King bed with white linens that probably had a thread count higher than my bank balance used to be. Walk-in closet, marble bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, and windows overlooking the Hudson River. Your things will be unpacked and organized, Mrs. Morrison said. Mr. Blackwood has arranged for a personal shopper. She'll arrive tomorrow morning at 9 to outfit you appropriately. Appropriately. Because everything I owned wasn't good enough for Damian Blackwood's wife. The penthouse has a comprehensive security system, she continued, and something in her tone made my skin prickle. Cameras in all common areas. Mr. Blackwood monitors them personally. I turned sharply. Cameras? For your protection, Mrs. Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood takes security very seriously. Her pale eyes met mine. The only spaces without surveillance are your bedroom and bathroom. Everywhere else, someone is always watching. The words landed like a threat disguised as comfort. After Mrs. Morrison left, I did what any sane person would do. I looked for the cameras, found one hidden in the crown molding of the living room, another in the bookshelf, 3 in the kitchen alone, tiny lenses that probably cost more than my nursing school tuition, watching every move I made. I stood in the middle of that massive living room and stared directly at the camera in the ceiling light fixture. Security, not surveillance, I said to the empty room. To Damian, wherever he was watching. Sure, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Feeling settled, wife? I typed back, feeling like a prisoner with better furniture. The response was immediate. You agreed to the terms. 1 year. Then you're free. Free? I muttered. Deleting the conversation. Right. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft. The silence too complete. I kept thinking about those cameras, about Damien watching me move through his space like I was a specimen in a lab. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and did what I'd been wanting to do since I signed that contract. I went exploring. The penthouse was different at night. Shadows from the city lights cut across the marble floors like prison bars. I moved quietly through the living room, down a hallway I hadn't been shown during the tour. Damien's private office was at the end of the hall. The door was locked. Naturally, Damien's private office. Then Nandad. 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 But I'd watched enough YouTube videos about picking locks back when I was a broke college student trying to get into my own apartment after losing keys. It took me 7 minutes and a bobby pin to get the door open. The office was smaller than I expected, more personal. Dark wood desk, leather chair, and walls covered in photographs. But not family photos. Not art. Photos of me. My hands started shaking as I moved closer. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all taken from a distance. Like surveillance shots. Me leaving campus after class. Me serving tables at Romano's Diner. Me walking through Prospect Park on my day off. Me sitting on my fire escape with coffee, staring at nothing. Some of the photos were dated. I checked the timestamps with growing horror. 3 months ago. 6 months. Some were from nearly a year before my father died. Damien had been watching me. Not for weeks. For months. Maybe longer. Before the debt. Before the contract. Before any of this started. I wanted to throw up. Wanted to run. Wanted to scream. Instead, I kept searching. Because if Damien had been stalking me, there had to be a reason. Something that connected me to whatever my father had found. Whatever secrets were worth killing for. I found his desk drawers locked. But the same bobby pin trick worked on cheap desk locks too. Inside the bottom drawer, files. Thick manila folders labeled with names I didn't recognize. Business documents. Legal papers. And then, underneath everything else, a file with a name that stopped my heart. Elena Martinez. Classified. The woman Victoria Sterling had mentioned. The girlfriend who disappeared. The one who supposedly looked like me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Police reports. Missing person statements. Witness interviews. And photos of a woman with dark hair and sharp cheekbones. And eyes that could have been mine in different light. Victoria was right. We could have been sisters. I flipped through pages, scanning quickly, looking for answers. Elena Martinez, age 26. Last seen 4 years ago. Billionaire boyfriend Damien Blackwood questioned but never charged. Case went cold after 6 months. And then I found the note, handwritten on Blackwood Enterprises letterhead. In handwriting I recognized from the contract I'd signed. She knew too much. Had to disappear. No other choice. The words blurred. The room tilted. Damien's handwriting. His words. Admitting he'd made Elena disappear. I was married to a murderer. The light suddenly blazed on, blinding me. Looking for something, wife? Damien's voice came from the doorway, smooth and cold, and absolutely unsurprised. I spun around, the file falling from my hands, papers scattering across his desk. He stood there in the doorway, still wearing his suit from work, tie loosened, gray eyes fixed on me, with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, something worse. Satisfaction, like I'd finally done exactly what he wanted me to do. I can explain. I started, my voice shaking. Can you? He moved into the office, slow and deliberate, closing the door behind him. You broke into my private office, picked the lock, went through confidential files. That's quite enterprising for someone who's only been my wife for 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days. That's all it had taken for me to prove I was exactly what he thought I was. Desperate. Reckless. Stupid. The photos, I whispered. You've been watching me for months. Since before my father died. Why? Damien moved to his desk, gathering up the scattered papers from Elena's file with careful, methodical movements. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. Sit down, Maya. It's time you knew the truth. He caught me with the photos. But instead of threats, Damien said 6 words that changed everything. It's time you knew the truth. I didn't sit. Couldn't. My legs felt like they might give out. But sitting in that chair, in his office, surrounded by surveillance photos of my own life, felt like surrendering. I'll stand. Thanks. Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter on the bar cart, the kind of liquor that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. He held one out to me. You're going to want this. I don't drink. Tonight, you do. He pressed the glass into my hand. Our fingers brushed, and I hated that I noticed. Hated the electric current that ran up my arm at the contact. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about your father. About me. About why you're really here. I took the glass. Didn't drink it. Just held it. Like a weapon I might need. Damien moved to the windows, his back to me, silhouetted against the New York City skyline like some tragic villain in a movie. When he spoke, his voice was different, quieter, raw, in a way I hadn't heard before. I didn't start watching you 6 months ago, Maya. I've known about you for 7 years, since the day your father first walked into my office asking for money to renovate that brownstone. My stomach dropped. What? He showed me photos. Of you. Said you were his daughter. That you didn't know anything about his business. That you were innocent in all of this. Damien turned, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. He said, She doesn't know anything. Keep her safe, or I release everything. The glass slipped in my hand. I caught it before it fell. My father used me as leverage? Against you? Insurance policy. Damien's smile was bitter. David Chen was smarter than I gave him credit for. He knew what he'd found in that brownstone, knew how valuable it was, knew people would kill for it. So he made sure I had a reason to keep him alive. By threatening to hurt me if you killed him? No. Damien crossed the room, stopping close enough that I could see the pain cracking through his carefully controlled facade. By making me care whether you lived or died. By showing me a girl working 2 jobs to get through nursing school. A girl who'd cut her father out of her life because he was toxic and selfish. A girl who deserved better than to be collateral damage in someone else's war. His words hung in the air like smoke. So you stalked me. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Took photos. Watched me live my life. That's not protection, Damien. That's obsession. It was both. He didn't even try to deny it. At first, it was just monitoring, making sure David's enemies didn't get to you before I figured out what he'd hidden. But then, he stopped, swallowed hard. Then, I made the mistake of actually paying attention, of watching you smile at customers who treated you like garbage. Of seeing you study for exams on the subway at midnight because you were too exhausted to keep your eyes open. Of watching you be kind and stubborn and so goddamn brave that I... He cut himself off, turned away, but I'd seen it. The crack in his armor. The truth he didn't want to admit. You what? I whispered. I started caring. The words sounded like a confession, like an accusation. which was exactly what your father wanted. He trapped me as surely as he trapped you. Because when he died, when someone poisoned him in that hotel room, my first thought wasn't about the money or the documents or revenge. It was about you, about how they'd come for you next. I sank into the chair. The scotch sloshed in the glass. The contract marriage, I said slowly. It wasn't about the debt at all. No, Damien finally looked at me again. It was about keeping you close, controlled, where I could protect you, while I figured out who killed your father and why, where no one could get to you without going through me first. My mind was reeling. Nothing made sense. Everything made sense. Tell me about your father, I said. Jonathan Blackwood. Tell me what my father found that was worth killing for. Damien poured himself another scotch, drank it in one swallow. Then he started talking. 20 years ago, my father was a good man, built Blackwood Enterprises from nothing. Fair, ethical. The kind of businessman who believed profit shouldn't come at the cost of people's lives. His voice went hollow. He discovered embezzlement within his own company. Millions being siphoned by his business partners. The CFO, 3 board members, people he'd trusted for decades. I listened, afraid to breathe, afraid to break whatever spell was letting him tell me this. My father gathered evidence, financial records, email trails, proof of fraud that would have sent them all to prison for 20 years. Damien's hands clenched around his glass. Before he could go to the authorities, they killed him, made it look like an accident. A fire during renovation at that brownstone on Riverside Drive, the place he'd bought as an investment property, the place where he'd hidden the evidence. He hid it in the brownstone, in the walls, behind the fireplace, on the 3rd floor. That's what we think anyway. But the fire destroyed most of the interior. The investigation was rushed, ruled accidental. Case closed. My mother got a life insurance payout and drank herself to death within 2 years, and I was 15 years old, standing at my father's funeral, knowing he'd been murdered, and being too powerless to do anything about it. The pain in his voice made my chest ache. So, you spent 20 years getting powerful enough to take revenge? I spent 20 years building an empire so that no one could ever touch me again, so that I could hunt down everyone responsible and destroy them the way they destroyed my family. His gray eyes met mine. Your father found those documents during renovation, 7 years ago, found proof that would put some very powerful people in prison, and he tried to use it. To blackmail you? To auction it to the highest bidder? My enemies, business rivals, anyone who wanted leverage over Blackwood Enterprises. Damien's voice went cold. So I gave him a loan he could never repay, trapped him in debt, made him dependent on me. I was going to force him to tell me where the documents were hidden. And then, someone else got to him first. The same people who killed my father. They found out David had the evidence. They poisoned him before he could tell me where it was. And now they think you know, that your father told you. That's why the contract marriage had to happen fast. Why I couldn't give you time to think, or plan, or run. Because every day you were unprotected was another day they could get to you. I drank the scotch. All of it. The burn down my throat felt good. Real. The photos of Elena, I said. The note in your handwriting. She knew too much. Had to disappear. What about that? Something shifted in Damien's expression. He moved to his desk, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen a few times before handing it to me. That's Elena Martinez, alive and well in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Posted 2 hours ago. I stared at the Instagram photo. A beautiful woman with dark hair, lounging on a beach, cocktail in hand, caption in Spanish about loving her new life. The account was verified. Public. Very much belonging to someone who wasn't dead. Elena was a corporate spy. Damien said flatly. Sent by my business partners 4 years ago to get close to me, to seduce me, to find those documents before I did. When I realized what she was, I gave her a choice: disappear with $2 million in untraceable cash, or face federal charges for corporate espionage and fraud. $2 million. He said it so casually, like it was pocket change. She took the money, moved to Argentina, lives very comfortably on a beach in Mar del Plata. I get updates from my security team every month confirming she's still there, still alive, still spending my money on designer handbags and expensive wine. Why? I scrolled through Elena's Instagram, photo after photo of a woman living her best life. Definitely not murdered. Definitely not buried somewhere. Then who wrote that note? The one in your file? That's the question I've been asking myself since you broke into my office. Damien took his phone back. Because I didn't write it. Someone forged my handwriting. Someone with access to this penthouse. Someone who wanted you to find it. The realization hit like ice water. They wanted me to think you were a murderer. Wanted me to run. To be scared. To be unprotected. Because if you run, you're easy prey. If you trust me, you're protected by everything I've built. Someone is playing us both, Maya. They forged that note. They've been manipulating this situation from the beginning, and I think I know who. Who? But before he could answer, I already knew. The only person with constant access to this penthouse. The only person who could plant evidence in Damien's office without raising suspicion. Mrs. Morrison. Blongley. Blungley. 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 Damien nodded slowly. She's been with this household for 15 years. Came with impeccable references. I trusted her completely. But she would have had access to everything. My handwriting samples. My files. The ability to plant that forged note exactly where you'd find it. Why would she do this? Who's she working for? The same people who killed my father and yours. The same people who want those documents destroyed before they surface. He moved closer, and this time I didn't step back. Maya, we need to find what your father hid. Before they do, before Mrs. Morrison reports back to them that you're not scared enough to run, that I've told you everything. The brownstone. We have to search the brownstone. Tonight, before they know what we're planning. Before they can stop us. His hand reached out, fingers brushing my cheek, so gently, I almost didn't believe it was happening. I know you have no reason to trust me. I've lied to you, manipulated you, trapped you in this marriage. But I need you to believe me now. Your life depends on it. I looked up at him, saw the boy who'd lost his father at 15. The man who'd spent 20 years building armor around a heart that had been shattered too young. The monster who was maybe just broken. I believe you, I whispered. And God help me, I did. Something flickered across his face. Relief. Gratitude. Something that looked dangerously like hope. We leave in an hour. Midnight. Under cover of darkness. Wear dark clothes. Comfortable shoes. And Maya? He stepped back, putting professional distance between us again. Whatever we find in that brownstone tonight, whatever truth comes out, I need you to remember something. What? I may be a bastard. Controlling, ruthless, probably damned in about 17 different ways. But I don't kill innocent people. And you. His voice went rough. Raw. You're the first thing I've wanted to protect, more than I want revenge. The words landed like a bomb in the space between us. I should have said something. Should have responded. But I just stood there, holding that empty Scotch glass, realizing that somewhere between the surveillance photos and the forced marriage, and this moment right here, I'd started to see past the monster. started to see the man underneath. And that was more dangerous than any conspiracy, more terrifying than any threat. Because in this world of lies and revenge and murder, falling for Damian Blackwood might be the one thing that actually kills me. An hour later, dressed in black jeans and a dark hoodie that one of Damian's staff had somehow procured in under 30 minutes, I stood in the penthouse elevator, heading down to the garage. Damian stood beside me, also in black, looking like he was preparing for a heist in a movie, which, I guess, we were. "The brownstone's been abandoned since your father died," he said quietly, structurally unsound. "The city condemned it last year. No electricity, no heat. But if my father hid those documents where I think he did, they'll still be there. Behind the fireplace on the 3rd floor." Exactly. The elevator doors opened. A black SUV with tinted windows waited, engine running. Marcus at the wheel. Silent. Loyal. Probably armed. We climbed in. The car pulled out into the New York night. I stared out the window at the city sliding past. Thought about my father, about the choices he'd made, about how he'd used me as insurance without my knowledge, about how he'd gotten himself killed trying to profit from someone else's tragedy. David Chen hadn't been a good man, but he'd been my father, and someone had murdered him. "When we find the documents," I said quietly, "when we have proof, what happens then?" Damian's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezed once. "Then we burn them all to the ground. Everyone responsible. Everyone who thought they could kill and steal and get away with it because they had money and power." His voice was steel. "Promise. Threat. Justice, Maya. For my father. For yours. For everyone they've destroyed." I squeezed back. Held on. "Then let's go find it." The brownstone loomed ahead in the darkness. Riverside Drive. Number 1847. 4 stories of crumbling Victorian beauty, boarded windows, condemned signs on the door. The place where Jonathan Blackwood died. The place where my father found secrets worth killing for. The place where, tonight, everything would finally come to light. Or where we'd discover we were already too late. Marcus killed the engine. The street was empty, silent, like the city itself was holding its breath. Damian turned to me. "Last chance to back out. Stay in the car. Let me do this alone." Quote, "Let me do this alone." Quote, "Not a chance." I opened my door. "We're in this together now, for better or worse. That's what the marriage vows say." He almost smiled. Almost. "Come on, wife. Let's go break some laws." We moved toward the brownstone like shadows, like thieves in the night, like 2 people about to uncover the truth that would either save us or destroy us both. Breaking into the brownstone at 2 in the morning with my contract husband should have been the craziest thing I'd ever done. Until we found what was hidden in the walls and realized we weren't alone. The front door was boarded up, but Damian had come prepared. He pulled a crowbar from the duffel bag Marcus handed him and made quick work of the plywood covering. The wood splintered with a crack that sounded like gunfire in the silent street. We both froze, listened. Nothing but the distant sound of traffic on the West Side Highway. "After you, Mrs. Blackwood," Damian whispered, gesturing at the dark opening. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Mold and rot and something else. Something that made my skin crawl. The brownstone had been beautiful once. I could see it in the crown molding, the wide plank floors, the grand staircase curving up into darkness. But 20 years of neglect had turned it into something from a horror movie. Water damage stained the walls. The ceiling sagged in places. Our footsteps echoed on floors that creaked ominously with every step. "3rd floor," Damian said quietly. "Stay close to me." We climbed the staircase slowly, testing each step before putting our full weight on it. The building groaned around us like something alive, like it was warning us to turn back. The second-floor landing was worse. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, exposing wooden beams and wiring. I could see where the fire had eaten through the structure 20 years ago. Charred wood, melted fixtures, the ghost of Jonathan Blackwood's death, written in burn marks and destruction. "Are you sure this is safe?" I whispered. "No." Damien's hand found my lower back, steadying me. "But we're out of options." The third floor was surprisingly intact. The fire had been contained mostly to the second floor, though smoke damage blackened the walls. There were 3 rooms, 2 bedrooms, and what looked like it had been an office. And in the office, against the far wall, was a fireplace. Original brick, elaborate carved mantel. Exactly the kind of place someone might hide something they never wanted found. Damien moved to it immediately, running his hands over the brickwork, pressing and testing. I watched the doorway, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Here," he said suddenly. "3rd row from the bottom. 7 bricks from the left. It's loose." He worked the brick free. Then another. Then 3 more. Behind them was darkness, a hollow space that shouldn't exist. Damien reached inside, pulled out a metal box, waterproof, fireproof, about the size of a shoebox. We both stared at it like it might explode. "This is it," he breathed. 20 years. This is what my father died protecting." His hand shook as he opened it. Inside were documents, thick folders sealed in plastic bags, financial records, emails printed on paper that had yellowed with age, photographs of men in suits exchanging briefcases, bank statements showing wire transfers in the millions, proof, irrefutable proof of embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Names I recognized from business news: the CFO of Blackwood Enterprises, 3 board members who still sat on the board today, 20 years later. People with power and money and connections that reached into every corner of Manhattan's elite. "We got them," Damien whispered. His voice broke. "Dad, we got them." I pulled out my phone, started photographing everything, page after page, creating a digital backup in case something happened to the originals. That's when I heard it. Footsteps on the stairs, multiple people, flashlights cutting through the darkness below. Damien's head snapped up. His hand went to the small of his back, pulling out a gun I hadn't known he was carrying. "Get behind me," he ordered quietly. "Now." But I was already moving, grabbing the metal box, shoving it into the duffel bag. Whatever happened, we couldn't lose this evidence. Not after everything. The footsteps grew closer. Voices, now, low, urgent. "They're on the 3rd floor." I saw the lights. That voice. I knew that voice. The door opened. Flashlights blinded us. 3 figures stepped into the room, backlit so I couldn't see their faces. Then Mrs. Morrison's clipped British accent cut through the darkness. "Put the gun down, Mr. Blackwood. We're all friends here." Damien didn't lower the weapon. "Show yourself." The figures moved into the room. Mrs. Morrison, dressed in black tactical gear that made her look 20 years younger. And 2 men I didn't recognize. Both armed, both professional in a way that screamed military or private security. But it was the 4th person who made my blood turn to ice. Jessica Torres stepped through the doorway. My best friend, my roommate from nursing school, the person I'd trusted with every secret, every fear, every dream. She was holding a gun, pointed directly at me. "Hey, babe," she said, and her smile was poison. Miss me? The world tilted. Stopped making sense. "Jess, what are you doing?" "What I've been doing for the past 3 years, since the day I befriended you in anatomy and physiology, since I became your shoulder to cry on, your study buddy, your best friend." She moved closer, and I could see it now. The calculation in her eyes. The coldness I'd mistaken for strength. Playing the long game. Damien's gun shifted toward her. Don't move. Or what? You'll shoot me? Your wife's best friend? I don't think so, Damien. You're ruthless, but you're not stupid. Killing me means losing whatever trust you've built with Maya, and we both know that's the only thing keeping her from running. Why? My voice came out broken, destroyed. Why would you do this? Jessica's expression went hard. Because Jonathan Blackwood owed me. Owed my mother. Owed the daughter he abandoned before Damien was even born. The words landed like bullets. What are you talking about? Jonathan Blackwood had an affair 25 years ago. With my mother, Rebecca Torres. Got her pregnant. Promised he'd leave his wife. Instead, he paid her off. Gave her $50,000 to disappear. To raise me alone. To never speak his name. The bitterness in her voice could have stripped paint. While Damien got a trust fund and a company and a legacy, I got a drunk mother in a studio apartment in the Bronx. While he went to private schools, I worked 3 jobs to afford community college. The Blackwood family owed me everything, and I was going to take it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You're his sister, Damien said quietly. My half-sister. Surprise. Jessica's smile was vicious. But that's not even the best part. Want to tell her, Maya? Or should I? Tell me what? David Chen was screwing my mother too. Before you were born. They had a whole affair when your parents were supposedly happily married. My mother got pregnant. Miscarried at 4 months. But David stayed in touch. Felt guilty, I guess. When he found those documents in this brownstone 7 years ago, guess who he called? My mother. His former mistress. His almost baby mama. My knees almost gave out. No. Yes. Jessica moved closer. Gun still steady. My mother and David Chen were partners. They found those documents together. Planned to use them together. To blackmail Blackwood Enterprises. To finally get what they were owed. But your father got greedy. Wanted a bigger cut. Wanted to cut my mother out entirely. So she did what needed to be done. She killed him. The words tasted like ash. Your mother poisoned my father. Thallium poisoning. Slow, painful. Looks exactly like a heart attack if you don't know what to look for. My mother learned that working as a nurse at Mount Sinai. Ironic, right? The hospital where your mother got her cancer treatment. Where all those unpaid bills came from. Medical knowledge used to murder instead of heal. Jessica laughed. Cold. Empty. And the best part? You and I look alike because we're half-sisters, Maya. Same father, different mothers. David Chen knocked up both our moms. We're family. The room spun. Everything I thought I knew shattered like glass. I don't believe you. DNA doesn't lie. I can show you the tests. David Chen was a lot of things, but faithful wasn't one of them. Your father used you as insurance against Damien. My mother used me as insurance against your father. We're both just pawns in someone else's game, sis. The only difference is, I decided to flip the board. Damien's voice cut through, sharp and controlled. What do you want, Jessica? What I've always wanted. Those documents. The evidence that will destroy Blackwood Enterprises and everyone associated with it. The proof that will let me sue for my rightful inheritance. The ammunition that will make me rich while watching you lose everything. She gestured with the gun. Hand over the bag. Walk away. Forget you ever found this. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let Maya live. No, Damien didn't move. You kill us. You lose the only witnesses who can verify the documents are authentic. You need us alive to testify when you go public." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "I don't need both of you, just one. And Maya's a lot more sympathetic than the billionaire who everyone already suspects of murder." The gun swung toward Damien. Everything happened at once. I lunged forward, screaming. Damien shoved me aside. A gunshot exploded in the enclosed space, deafening. But it wasn't Jessica's gun. Mrs. Morrison had shot one of the armed men. He dropped like a stone. "Sorry, dear," Mrs. Morrison said, gun steady on the second man. "But I've been with this family for 30 years, since Damien was a boy, crying at his father's funeral. No one threatens my family, not even Jonathan's bastard daughter." The second man raised his hands, dropped his weapon. "Smart." Jessica spun, furious. "You were supposed to be on our side. I paid you." "You tried to pay me. I reported it to Mr. Blackwood immediately. Did you really think I'd betray the family I've served for 3 decades for money from a girl who couldn't even afford decent forgery?" "Mrs." Morrison's British accent went cold as winter. "That note you planted in Mr. Blackwood's office? The handwriting was terrible. A child could have spotted it as fake. I knew the moment I saw Miss Maya find it that someone was playing her." I stared at her. "You knew? This whole time?" "Of course, dear. Mr. Blackwood and I have been coordinating this operation for weeks, ever since he discovered your connection to Jessica Torres. We needed to flush out everyone involved. We needed you to trust him enough to come here tonight, to find the evidence, to draw out the real enemies." She smiled, almost apologetic. "I'm afraid we've used you rather terribly, but it was for your own protection. The manipulation, the layers of lies. I couldn't process it." Damien moved to my side, his hand finding mine. "I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but if Jessica suspected you knew she was compromised, she would have run. We needed her to show her hand, to lead us to everyone else involved." "Everyone else?" Jessica laughed, manic now. "You think it's just me? My mother has connections you can't imagine. Business partners in that evidence who will do anything to keep it buried. You've won this battle, Damien, but the war isn't over." "Yes," Damien said quietly, "it is." He pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. It was a live video feed. A woman I recognized from photos as Rebecca Torres, being led out of an apartment in handcuffs. Federal agents, FBI raid jackets. The works. "We raided your mother's apartment 20 minutes ago. Found enough evidence to put her away for 2 lifetimes. Fraud. Conspiracy to commit murder. Accessory after the fact. She's done, Jessica. And so are you." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Jessica's face crumpled. You can't do this." "I already did." Damien's voice held no mercy, no satisfaction, just cold, final justice. "For my father, for David Chen, bastard though he was. For every life your mother destroyed trying to get money she was never entitled to. It's over." The police flooded in moments later. They took Jessica away in handcuffs, still screaming about inheritance and injustice and how this wasn't fair. Mrs. Morrison calmly explained the situation to the officers, showed them identification that proved she worked for Blackwood Enterprises security, handed over her weapon for ballistics. Professional, competent, like she'd done this 100 times before. Maybe she had. Damien and I gave statements, handed over the documents as evidence, watched as crime scene techs photographed everything, bagged the metal box, turned the brownstone into an active investigation site. As dawn broke over Manhattan, we finally left. Marcus drove us back to Tribeca in silence. Mrs. Morrison had stayed behind to handle logistics. In the elevator up to the penthouse, Damien finally spoke. I know you're angry. I know I should have told you about Jessica, about the plan, about using you as bait. But if I'd told you everything, you couldn't have acted naturally around her. She would have known, and she would have disappeared before we could get justice. I leaned against the elevator wall, exhausted, broken. My father was a terrible person. My best friend was a lie. My half-sister tried to kill you. And I just found out I have family I never knew about, who are all apparently criminals or murder victims. Yes, and you manipulated me, used me, married me under false pretenses just to get close to my father's secrets and flush out his killers. Yes, his voice went quiet. I did all of that, and I'd do it again, because it was the only way to keep you alive. The elevator doors opened. We walked into the penthouse. The sun was rising over the Hudson, turning the sky pink and gold. Beautiful, like the world hadn't just shattered and reformed in the space of one night. I walked to the windows, stared out at the city that had taken so much from both of us. The contract says I can leave in 9 months, that I'm free after a year. It does. Damien's reflection appeared in the glass behind me, close but not touching. You've earned it. Debt's cleared. Your mother's medical bills are paid off. I'll set you up with the $100,000 like I promised. More, if you want it. You can walk away, Maya. Forget any of this happened. Start over somewhere new. I turned to face him. This man who'd trapped me, lied to me, protected me. This broken, ruthless, damaged man who'd spent 20 years building armor around a heart that had shattered at 15. What do you want, Damien? Really? For the first time since I'd met him, Damien Blackwood looked uncertain, vulnerable, almost afraid. I want you to stay, not because of a contract, not because of debt or obligation or protection. Just stay. Help me figure out who I am when I'm not chasing revenge. I don't know how to be anything else. I've spent my entire adult life hunting the people who killed my father. And now, it's done. They're going to prison. Justice is served. And I have no idea what comes next. He moved closer. His hand reached up, fingers brushing my cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. But with you, I think I could learn, could figure out how to be something more than rage and control and vengeance. You make me want to be better, Maya. You make me want to deserve the way you look at me, even when I don't. My breath caught. How do I look at you? Like I'm not a monster. Like I'm just a man who's been broken too long. His thumb traced my jawline. Like maybe I'm worth saving. I should have walked away. Should have taken the money and run. Should have put 3,000 miles between myself and Damien Blackwood and never looked back. Instead, I closed the distance between us, took his face in my hands, and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft or romantic or anything like the movies. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like truth. Like two people who'd been lying for so long they'd forgotten what honesty felt like. When we finally broke apart, Damien rested his forehead against mine. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. A let's see where this goes. A we figure it out together with no more lies. I pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. No more surveillance. No more manipulation. No more using me as bait in your schemes. We do this. We do it as equals. Partners. Not predator and prey. Partners, he repeated, like the word was foreign, new. I don't know how to do partners. Then we learn together. No contracts. No terms. Just us. And whatever comes next. That's terrifying. Good. You should be scared. I'm a waitress from Brooklyn who just found out her entire life was a lie. I've got nothing to lose, and a grudge against basically everyone. I'm probably the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to you." Damien laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty and unpracticed, but real. "You definitely are." He kissed me again. Slower this time. Like we had all the time in the world. Like we weren't standing in a penthouse worth millions, with the smoking ruins of two families' secrets behind us. When the sun fully rose over Manhattan, we were still there, still together, still figuring out what came after revenge.